So today I'm going to talk about the 3 main countries in Southeast Asia where foreigners typically go when they get their TEFL and they come out here to teach English abroad. And within these countries of Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam, I'm going to give you a breakdown. That's going to include the job requirements, the expected salaries, living in the countryside versus living in a major city, the cost of living, what you should expect being a teacher in these different countries in the classrooms. And finally, just some things to be aware of that a lot of people don't expect when they first move to these countries. So after today's video, you are going to know what country you want to move to in Southeast Asia to be a teacher. Cambodia is a very Asian country, and I say that because it holds their traditions. It's got that raw Asian culture that we think of when we think of old Asia, as well as a Western vibe to it. Now, when it comes to what is required, great news, you don't really need a degree out here to get a work permit. However, if you don't have a degree, you are going to be in a very competitive market. So bring your A game, have a strong CV package, and be ready to sell yourself. You are a product to make these schools money. And a degree or not, whoever sells themselves the best typically gets that job. Now, if you do have a degree, you do have an advantage. You will be above people that don't, for one. And two, it'll allow you to get some of the more accredited school jobs, which pay more. And of course, you need to have a TEFL. Even if you don't have a degree, you still need to have that 120-hour TEFL. Salaries in Cambodia, you only have 3 real options. You can work at an English center, you can work at an uncredited school, which are typically just like public schools. And then you have accredited, which can include international schools. In Vietnam, English centers are everywhere. In Cambodia, they're very limited. If you do land one of these jobs, you're looking between $14 to $18 an hour, and there's typically no benefits at all. Now, if you do land a job in a public school, you're looking at about $1,500 a month. And if you do land an international school, you're looking at about $2,000 a month. And these typically give you benefits. Now, we have to bring up bias and racism. When it comes to Cambodia, they don't really care about race, how you look for say. If you are qualified, they're going to take you. If you are a European with a bachelor's degree and a Filipino comes in with a teaching degree in English, they will most likely take the Filipino because it's a cheaper option. This is something special about Cambodia. It's not typically a race thing. And to bring this point even further, if you are American and you're white, and you're also competing against an American that's black or Asian, you guys all have the same pretty much leverage when it comes to getting that job. They don't care your race, they care where your passport's from. Now, when moving out to Cambodia, the main cities are going to be where most expats, most teachers live, and the salaries we've already talked about. Now, if you decide to go out to the countryside, which a lot of people don't really do, the salary drops drastically. You're looking between $5 to $10 an hour. They might help you with the rent a little bit, but you're getting 0 benefits. This is not a position where you're gonna save money. This is a position you take for the experience. The cost of living in the countryside for Cambodia goes down like 60, 70%. It is so cheap to live outside the main city in Cambodia, where living in the main city can be quite expensive. You have that modern life, you have the party nightlife and all that stuff. Countryside, you have none of this. Let's talk about cost of living. Cambodia is surprisingly quite expensive if you don't know anybody out here. Renting a motorbike, getting an apartment, buying your basic groceries can be overly expensive. When you move out here with the intent to live out here and work out here, you need to make friends. I don't care if it's through a dating app, if it's through Facebook groups, Reddit groups, you need to make Cambodian friends as fast as possible. This will save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Now, when it comes to the actual money, you can also use USD. You need to be careful. In Cambodia, they typically round up everything. So a bottle of water is $1. Right? No big deal. But if you use their money, a bottle of water is like 50 to 60 cents. So try to use their money whenever possible. And finally, for you guys that come out here that want to kind of have that Western life, you can do it in Cambodia. It's not that hard, actually. So getting like Western housing, Western stuff within that house, having a Western style car, eating Western food can get very expensive very fast. So if you plan on moving to Cambodia and living like you were back home, expect to pay damn near double everything I've just told you about Cambodia so far. Now let's get to the actual job itself. If you come out here, you have your 120-hour TEFL, you're ready to teach, what can you expect in these classrooms? One of the biggest questions I get are about TAs. Cambodia typically doesn't bring them in because of 2 main reasons. One, most classrooms are quite small. And number 2, what you're teaching is typically basic. You'll have props to use, you'll have lesson plans or something visual for the students to look at. When it comes to the classroom itself, don't expect TVs, don't expect any high tech. Build your lesson plans with the mindset of all you're gonna have is a whiteboard. A lot of classrooms have TVs and projectors and stuff like that. It's not as common as a lot of people like to think. It's very limited, so expect the worst. And the final part are some things that you should be aware of when you move to Cambodia. The first one is quite obvious, the language. The actual writing itself is not in a Latin-based language. You're not going to be able to sound out the letters or the words or anything like that. It's literally squiggles. You will be at a point, if you're going to live here long term, going to have to learn some of the basics of the language. So be ready for that. The language isn't that hard to learn. When it comes to the weather, it's extremely hot. We have AC, we have fans, so you are good. But if you're somebody that gets overly sick, stressed, whatever the case is with hot weather, Cambodia is going to be kind of an issue for you. It gets much hotter here than I've seen in a lot of Vietnam and Thailand. And when it comes to medical, Cambodia probably is the worst spot to get any medical done, be it minor or serious. If your best bet is go to Thailand. Typically, Cambodia is best for cheap medications, but when you're actually getting things done to your body, as in surgeries, dental work, and stuff like that, I would almost say avoid it because there's very few regulations, and if something bad happens, you're kind of on your own. So with that being said, let's get on to number 2, Thailand. I would almost say is the best one if it wasn't for the lousy salaries that they offer. First, let's talk about your job requirements. When you're working in Thailand, you pretty much just need your 4-year degree and your TEFL. There are no real ways to work in Thailand without a degree. It's illegal. You can't get a work permit, and schools require you to start doing the process within the first 30 days. So no degree, no job. That's simple. Now the salary, like I was just talking about before, is quite pathetic. If you are Filipino, you're looking between, give or take, 25 to 30,000 baht. If you are a non-native or native person from like a bigger country like America, Canada, South Africa, you can get up to 50K. So my advice with this is build a strong CV, like stronger than you would have in Cambodia, and really sell yourself. Be the fun, serious person that goes to the interview. Talk slow, talk clear, and use your best Western accent possible to get the highest pay. Now let's get over to the country living to city life. Now when people typically move out to Thailand, they go to Pattaya or they go to Bangkok. Working in Pattaya, I've always found to be cheaper and a lot more fun. You have a lot more temptation issues, if you know what I mean. And then when it comes to Bangkok, it's typically more serious people. The pay is not as competitive, and Bangkok's quite expensive to live in too. So these are things you really want to factor in. In Bangkok, you're really breaking even when it comes to money, so you're not saving a lot. Now, when it comes to living in the countryside, the pay is typically a bit lower, but the cost of living is ridiculously cheap. Your rents and your utility stuff like that pretty much drop in half the moment you get out of the main cities. I think some of the best experiences I've ever had in Thailand have never really been within Phuket, Pattaya, or Bangkok. It's been everything outside of that. Now, when it comes to the cost of living, like I said, living in country is quite cheap. Living in the big cities like Bangkok or Phuket are really expensive, and the salary is not competitive to really live out there comfortably. Now, when it comes to living in the countryside, it's ridiculously cheap. I rented a 2-bedroom, 2-story house when I was in Rayon. I think I paid 4,500 baht for it. A rental bike, you're looking at about 1,000 to 1,500 baht a month. And then when it comes to utilities and stuff like that, about 1,000 baht a month. For the phone service, I paid about 200 or 300 a month for unlimited data. So I didn't even need like an internet account. I just hotspotted my phone all the time. So when you finally get your teaching job, you get into the classroom, what can you expect? Now, Thailand is notorious for cheating. And the reason for this is schools get funding and bonuses, and teachers get bonuses when their classes get a high average. So if you're a teacher that's serious about education and things like cheating on tests openly, staff giving them answers, or you being told to make a special easy test for the students that barely show any interest and barely show up and don't care, you're going to get frustrated in Thailand when it comes to the education side. And not to mention the discipline within Thai classrooms is so hit and miss. Like there's some classrooms that are just out of control bad, and the schools will tell you to deal with it. Now, when it comes to the classrooms, I kind of just talked about it already. When you're in the main cities, to me, it felt like I was training zombies. Like everyone was just locked on their phone. Everybody kind of just copied answers. Nobody really paid attention. And during every break time, everyone was on TikTok doing TikTok dance videos. And when I got out to the countryside, it started to seem like I wasn't working in schools. I was working at training camp. When it came to like the big city like Bangkok and stuff, though, it did seem a little more serious. Now, when it comes to things you should be concerned about when it comes to Thailand, definitely the language. We talked about this in Cambodia. It's the same thing. It's a bunch of squiggles. You're going to have to learn some of it. Thai language isn't that hard. Just learn the basics. You can use pins or something like that. Go to a market and start speaking. Thai people are actually really open to you learning the language, where places like Vietnam, they are open to you while you're in a tourist area, but when you get out of the tourist area, Vietnamese don't want to talk to you unless you are fluent in their language. Like, they're actually kind of assholes. And when you do get outside of the main city areas, English isn't really a big thing. The very basics are fine. You can point at stuff, but you're probably going to want to learn a little Thai if you do get outside the main city areas. Now, when it comes to the paperwork, this is unique to Thailand. Thailand has to be one of the worst countries when it comes to getting your documents done. Like, there's constant bribery. There's constant rule changes at the last minute. You have to make 500 copies of the same document, get 900 different stamps. Like, it's ridiculous how intensive it is. I thought Vietnam was bad. Like, Thailand takes the cake. Like, I've been able to get work permits that took like a month and a half to get, no problems. And I've also had processes where it took me 6 months to get a B visa, which is a work permit visa, because we had to keep making photocopies. I had to go to the embassy like 9 different times for like random stamps that made no sense. That the government eventually was like, oh, we don't need that paper no more. We changed the rule. Start it as soon as possible because it's very random. And it doesn't matter if you get an agent or not. It's going to be a chaotic ride. And finally, the one everyone always waits for, Vietnam. Vietnam is the hotspot for pretty much all foreigners that want to teach English. It doesn't matter if you're native or not. The pay is higher, the living conditions are more modern, and the experience is some of the best you'll get in Asia. So when it comes to the job requirements, it's the same as Thailand. You need a 4-year degree and you need your 120-hour TEFL. You have this stuff, you got enough to get a work permit. There is no exception around this rule. And again, I'm going to bring this up in more detail because this gets asked so many times. I do not understand why people still think in Vietnam you can work without a degree. So let me break down legally why you can. In Vietnam, you have to have a work permit within 45 to 60 days. If the police come there, you've been there for like 35 days and you're still on a tourist visa, they can get in trouble. This has nothing to do with you. This has to deal with the school. They start getting fines. They start getting harassed. Now, if you are working as a teacher with no degree, understand that that school is breaking laws. They're breaking their own government education rules. They're breaking immigration laws. And police, as of 2024, are getting bonuses for cracking these schools that are hiring foreigners without degrees. Now, what happens to you if you get caught in a school teaching? Typically, they just tell you to never come back. And the school ends up getting closed or they get heavily fined. This has been happening all over Saigon and a lot of Hanoi areas. So if you are in Vietnam working without a degree, understand you have a bounty on your head, a very large one, where the government and the police are looking for you. They want to find you. And I also want to kind of crack on this idea of being a private tutor. Vietnamese teachers are starting to be taxed for being private tutors, meaning if a student goes to their house and they teach them English on the side, the government's starting to require receipts and tax payments for this type of stuff. So if you are doing private tutoring, I don't know where this is going to go. I've talked to a few of my friends in Da Nang about this that work in these departments. They said that they're looking into it. They don't know how to actually directly attack the idea yet, because how do you prove that? If you are teaching privately on the side to make a few extra bucks, you're probably okay. If you're doing it as a full-time job, you're probably going to be found out soon because people are going to talk about you. You're going to be on Facebook. So keep that in mind. Anything that you do without a degree in Vietnam is extinct. So if you have no degree, stick to Cambodia. Now, when it comes to the salary, it's pretty basic. If you're Filipino, typically you're looking at about $1,000 a month at 100 working hours. If you're Westerner and you're teaching, again, up to $1,500. I've seen up to $2,000 if you're working like international school. So you can definitely save money working in Vietnam. So when it comes to like salary scales, Vietnam definitely is the highest paid country in Southeast Asia. The countryside versus the city life. Where do you go? Now, first we have to address that Vietnam has removed English as a required final test for high school students and entry exams for universities. So this is making it harder to move to remote areas like Dalat or Phan Thiet or Sapa. So if your intent was to move to these spots and work as a teacher, you're probably not going to make the salaries I've mentioned before because they're not going to be able to hire you full time. So moving to these areas is definitely going to be a challenge. The difference though in general is countrysides are typically more polluted. They're way louder, and this is a mix of karaoke, construction, and more karaoke. When it comes to the city life, you have the nightlife, you have a lot more expat life, and you have a lot more opportunities for work and higher pay. If you can mix country life with the city life, this is a good way to really experience a lot of Vietnam that most people don't see, but also keep your sanity down. We kind of have this rule. The first 3 to 4 years in Vietnam are fun. Once you get to year 5 and 6, you start getting stressed. You get a little angry at the things going on because it's getting old. And once you hit year 7, this is when you start seeing the expats and the Westerners getting very angry. They're getting violent towards Vietnamese when they run them over with their motorbike or they're constantly honking. So if you can mix the country life and the city life, this can help you reduce a lot of this stress. So when it comes to the cost of living in Vietnam, I find Vietnam is one of the cheapest if you're living here. The salary is higher and the living isn't really that bad, but typically you can live on $700 to $1,000 a month. And finally, avoid Western areas. This is where condos and apartments are triple the price for no reason, where food is like double for no reason, where beer is triple for no reason. All these costs stack up very quick. If you can meet Vietnamese and become part of the communities, you can start saving a ton of money. You can rent houses for like $200-300 a month for like a 2-bedroom house. So avoid those and other Western related things. You'll save a ton of money. So you finally get to Vietnam, you're a teacher. What can you expect? Like Thailand, testing scores in Vietnam are a game. They're fake. It's for the same reason like Thailand. It's for bonuses. Schools and teachers get bonuses for having the highest marks within a class. So you're going to see students cheating. Teachers also giving them the test the day before or moments before the actual test. So do understand, in Vietnam, it's about filling out the blank spots and getting the answers. It's not about learning the skill. And this isn't just English. This is everything. Math, science, all of these. And that's how it's taught. And this is something you'll notice being out here is if you're teaching students younger or if you're teaching adults English or whatever you're teaching them, when it comes to giving them tests, quizzes, stuff like that, the first thing they do, regardless of their age, is they start copying other people. They start cheating because that's how we are trained out here to act. So there's really no winning in this. Vietnam education is pay to win. It comes down to that. Education is about the teachers making money. And what's crazy is these same teachers that do this stuff send their own kids through this school system and pay those teachers to cheat for their children. It's an endless cycle that I don't understand how you can bluntly see it but not care. Teaching in Vietnam, in short, is you're just a babysitter. There's nothing more to it. So there you have it, the good and the bad of teaching in these 3 main countries in Southeast Asia. Now I know I didn't talk about Lao. The reason I didn't talk about Lao is most jobs in Lao are volunteer based, meaning if you want to go to Lao and be an English teacher, you're typically going to be volunteering or making very little money. There are no long-term options for teaching English in Lao just because it's not a big demand. However, with that being said, Lao has to be one of my favorite countries in all of Southeast Asia. So definitely check the place out when you are here. It's a must-do to go. It's just unfortunately the teaching options there are none. But if you do decide to, the requirements are the same. 4-year degree and a TEFL. That's all you need for a work permit. But finding a job, good luck. So if you have any other questions about these schools, these countries, when it comes to teaching and living, let me know in the comments below. And also, if you don't have a TEFL, check the link below. I put like a 15% discount on it. Get this TEFL done online. It takes a couple days. It never expires. It's issued out of Thailand and respected throughout all of Southeast Asia. So it's probably one of the best TEFLs you can get for what you're doing, and for the price, it's a steal. And as I talked about a few videos ago, this came up a few times, doing live class TEFLs in Southeast Asia is a waste of time. And the reason I say is because in 2024, a lot of rules have changed in Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia when it comes to being a teacher out here. Meaning doing a live TEFL class almost has no validity no more. When it comes to your TEFL, if you're on the fence on do you take a live class because you get live experience or do you just do it online and figure it out as you go, figure it out as you go. The live experience is artificial. You're typically teaching trained classes, so they're on their best behavior with intent. But when you actually get into a Vietnamese classroom, you realize, holy shit, this is crazy. Because it is. It's not what you expect. I just don't think they're worth it. Like 2022, 2023, or before that, 100% you should do it because it's a cool option. But now, you're just paying money to make friends. Like, that's sad. Don't do that. With that being said, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for watching. I will see you again.